Hi you guys, welcome to another episode of Racial Trauma Healing with Najwa. I'm very happy you're here. Today what we're going to focus on, meditate, try to work through is the issue of races. Now, a lot of you guys out there may know, maybe you don't, but maybe you do, know that anthropologically, in the study of anthropology, there is no race. There is no race, there's only the human race. There's no black, there's no white, there's no Hispanic, there's no Native American. We are literally one species, that is Homo sapiens sapiens. That is our race, but there are these social constructs, obviously, that we know of that come from slavery, that come from colonization, that come from eugenics and phrenology. Basically, that was used as a tool of white supremacy dating way before, Jesus Christ. But definitely that was very much adopted by the Roman Empire. And I say this as a Catholic, that was adopted by the Roman Empire and used for the reasons that it's used today. But today I want to talk through this issue of the race, for black people, minority people, people of color, Hispanic, Native American, Indigenous, Aborigine, black, Asian. Sometimes we run into a lot of problems with race, right? And so that's what we're going to work through today. We're going to do some breathing techniques. Okay, we're going to do some smiling, lots of smiles along the way, because it's really good when you get in touch with your body and your spirit and you remember that you are not just what's defined about your skin, but at the same time, society has defined that as a social construct. And so you also do need people to see you as an Asian American or a Latino American or a Latina American or a Muslim American or Palestinian American or Black American or Dominican American. You actually need people to see that element of you while, experiencing this dichotomy of not having that define who you are as a person, right? So I figured the best place to go to for inspiration for this video was from Joy DeGruy, Dr. Joy DeGruy. It's a play off of post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic slave syndrome. I've seen that book on the bookshelf in my mom's office for nearly, 20 years. I'm 32 years old. For 20 years, I saw that book there, and I never ever read it. I finally read it this year. Things are getting so crazy, so I think a lot of people of color are taking it upon themselves to revisit those things that they weren't aware of. But it's not just that. I've always had a deep history for art history of Africa. A lot of times art history, when I studied art history in university, even some of my great white teachers were like, I'm going to go ahead and clarify for you, the study of art history likes to group Africa as just Egypt, that's it, and there were no other innovations within Africa. But we of course know that Egypt is in Africa, and black Africans actually did a lot of contributions for civilization. That's just a story untold, right? But that coupled with this new growing fondness that I have for the Joseon dynasty of South Korea, of Korea, before it was South and North and all that stuff. Going back to some of those things that I learned about my own history, those African folk tales, looking at the experiences of indigenous people. I've always been a learner in that way, and I love exploring that. But this one is one that, I knew I needed to go take a look at it because I talked to a friend from high school that I hadn't talked to in a long time, and she was like, go read that book. And so I've started reading it, and of course, it's amazing. I think I'm in chapter 3 now. But I wanted to read you this excerpt, since we're discussing race today and we don't want that to define us, but at the same time, we have to be woke and aware that these are the things, taking that word woke back, okay, it has a totally different meaning from what the far right wants you to believe it, and we're owning that word. But it basically means staying alive by being aware of atrocities and discrimination and prejudice against you, or that could be enacted against you because of whatever minority group you may belong to, particularly the black minority group, but of course that can apply to anyone. But it involves being woke to those atrocities. So it's like, I'm asking you to look beyond my race, but I'm also asking you to see my race and see how society sees my race. You know what that means? It's like, if there is a deep dichotomy in finding that. So let's go on down. So, the myth of race. Here's a little test. What are the races of humanity? Perhaps you came up with a list that looks like this using identifications by colors. Black, white, brown, yellow, red. Pause there. You guys know I pause a lot. What does that speak to you? Right there, already going right into it. And this book is wonderful. I mean, she brings her found and true experiences as a person of color, but also someone who's traveled the world, traveled to Africa and seen those roots, and those roots, how they've been, the roots of racism and how they've been translated back in the U.S. Her experience as a teacher, she brings it all into here with an element of, you know, sort of scientific, empirical data mixed up with that sort of experience-based, sort of emotion-based element, that just trueness that comes from the found Black experience. But it's really wonderful. So black, white, brown, yellow, or red. Or maybe you are more politically correct, and your list may have looked like this: African, European, Asian, Native American, Hispanic, Latino, Pacific Islander. Pause there. Another great resource is Jane Elliott. She did a study on eye color where kids basically showed this bias that was created from society, but how they can be, not necessarily trained, I don't want it to sound like they're monkeys, but they can be taught, and they can be fed that knowledge and wisdom to know that your sisters and brothers, your Black sisters and brothers, your Hispanic, you know, Asian, whoever, white sisters and brothers, we basically belong to one race, and there's no difference between us. Society, a racist society, is what has created those differences of the race. So Jane Elliott, she's also a great one to check out. Or perhaps you're really reaching back and came up with Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. That right there threw me off. That's me speaking. So despite our constant everyday use of the term race and our reference to various races, the biology of human beings is such that there is no real differences between humans. And you will find this in academia. Those who are not too stubborn to be able to admit the truth. You'll find a lot of snobs in art history and academia who want to deny that we all came from Africa, who want to deny that Black women were the birth of civilization. They want to deny that Egypt is a part of Africa and want to keep pretending that it's a part of the Middle East. They want to deny that anthropologically there's one race, there's a human race. It goes on to say, race is frequently characterized by skin color, hair texture, facial features, etc. These differences are offered as examples of how we differ as humans. The underlying assumption is that there is a genetic or biological component to these distinctions that defines the races. Pause again. When you think about your friends, your family, or even strangers of a different race outside of yours, do they have families? Do they have a mom? Do they have a dad? Do they enjoy certain types of food? Do they like a nice laugh every once in a while? Do they have a need to be hugged every once in a while, to have love around them? Do they have a need to watch a cool movie from time to time, you know? We're one race, we're the human race. So what's so difficult is living in a world as a person of color and people don't see that of you. They dehumanize you, and it's very difficult to live with. So it goes on to say, the assumption simply is not true. One cannot separate people into racial groups based upon any set of physical characteristics. Attempting to do so is fraught with contradictions. The Bushmen of Southern Africa look as much Asian as they do African. Pacific Islanders have both African and Asian features. The Ainu of Japan look more European than Asian. The Lapps of Scandinavia look as much Eskimos as they do Europeans. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia, who often look African, commonly have very straight and wavy hair and are frequently blonde as children. Pause there again. Why is it that from time to time you'll look at someone of a different race and they remind you of someone of a whole nother race? Have you ever had that experience Well, it's because we're all sisters and brothers, cousins, stemming from the same family tree, and from time to time you're going to have variations. No, not from time to time. You are going to have variations of brown. We're different shades and variations of brown. And at the end of the day, that's all that it is. We came up out of Africa. Some people went to Europe. Some people went to Asia. People went to the Americas. Some people went to Australia. That's all that you have. That's it. It goes on to say there are just a few problems one runs into when arguing for the existence of biological racial differences. There are many others, among them dark-skinned people from India or Egyptians who run the gamut from European-looking to African. And how do we identify those from the Middle East? There is, however, a hope for those who must differentiate people by race. Earwax. Yes, earwax. As far as we know, it seems that East Asian peoples have dry earwax and the rest of the population has moist earwax. Random point, kind of gross, but okay. So if it is important to you to group people by physical characteristics, there's something you can hang your hat on. So I'm just going to kind of skip down to the bottom here to her conclusion on this. The conclusion says, to me, noticing difference is most important because it is the first step in arresting the national hemorrhaging of African Americans. African Americans, as we know, are being targeted. Our health is being targeted. We receive less quality health care. We're being locked out of the room in middle management, in executive leadership, in venture capital, in the jobs. We're being eradicated. Hemorrhaging of American peoples. We're being locked out of certain areas of politics by certain groups. Okay? Quite literally, we're being shot in the middle of the street for what? For nothing. We're being pulled over for minor traffic infractions and going home in a body bag. That's what's happening to African Americans. She goes on to say, it is through such an awareness that we can take the first steps towards healing the wounds passed on to the present generation by centuries of ignorance and neglect at the hands of governors and the governed alike. Pause there again. Racism can be reversed. It can be changed. And Jane Elliott, puts this perfectly. She goes, white people can change. And of course, it's not just white people who can be racist. Anybody can be racist. But in terms of minority of population, because white people represent less than 20% of this world, in terms of a minority population that has the most power on the planet, it's white people. So they also have the power to effectuate change. It's going to be them, along with probably black women, according to Jane Elliott, who are going to be able to effectuate the most change. But to come back to what she said, she basically said, there's hope because you can see how the Japanese treat Americans. Americans drop bombs on Japan and Japan can still manage to be in the same room as Americans. White Americans, have done atrocious things to black Americans, to Hispanic Americans, to Asian Americans, to Muslim Americans. But somehow those groups can manage to go to work with them every day. Jane Elliott basically says that right there is hope that things can change and people can effectuate change. But back to Joy DeGruy. She says, and this is not only between black and white America. We need to notice because the overwhelming majority of the world are people of color. So if humanity is to evolve, we need to notice the differences among peoples, understand them, celebrate them, learn how to integrate these differences, and become a true world community. There was another author who put this really, really nicely, Anthony T. Bowder. He wrote Now Valley Contributions to Civilization. And he basically speaks on how the Western Europe has done, it's been a concerted effort, and I even learned this in my studies in art history in university. There has been a concerted effort in history and art history to whitewash African history, to whitewash Asian history. And many times what Western Europe would do would be like, okay, we're gonna fox with these people. I know I sound really nerdy when I say that. We're gonna fox with these people if they are more Eurocentric. So that's why you find Cleopatra looking like a white woman. That's why you find Pocahontas looking like a white woman. I can't really think of a Asian woman, but I do watch a lot of Asian shows. I watch a lot of South Korean shows in particular, but sometimes Chinese as well. And you can also see where that's penetrated there as well, where sometimes this Eurocentric Asian beauty, Memoirs of a Geisha, voila. You know, do I have to say more? Geisha with blue eyes. I even think that that actress wore contact lenses, you know, to achieve that Eurocentric look. So there's a long history of this, and it's not just black people that it affects. You know, there was, I will share this with you, you know, there was one time here in Paris, France, where I live, although I'm American, I'm from the U.S., and I've had experiences there, but you know, it's mostly been in the time of MAGA that I've had these most outrageous racist experiences. But on 3 different occasions, I'm gonna go ahead and say that here in Europe, I've experienced a North African man, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it like that, treating me like an animal, you know, just for simply, and it was always in a context of service. One was my professor in university, who I eventually had to report to the university. Another was a charter bus driver who refused to talk to me. Another was a doctor, and I was simply trying to ask a question, and he told me to shut up. There is also this element of a person of color who's somewhere in between European and African, you know, dark-skinned African, I should say. And they take on this coon mentality. They adopt that mentality of the colonizer, and someone who is so extreme dehumanizes people who look more like them than like Europeans. So much so, I guess, because it's like they needed to adopt that in order to feel better about themselves, in order to fit in with this white Eurocentric crowd, in order to appease white people and make them feel like, hey, I'll say what you won't say, whatever it is. But the thing is that although I'm speaking of people of African descent, like I am, although History World tries to make Egypt be Middle Eastern, this occurs, this coon type behavior, this adopting the colonizer type behavior happens in every single ethnic minority culture. It happens in Asian culture, happens in Indigenous culture, it happens in Middle Eastern and Arabic speaking nations, cultures. It happens in Australia, it happens in English speaking countries, Spanish speaking countries, it happens all over, right? And the irony is a lot of times these people are darker skinned. It's almost like they need to do that to prove it. And that's just one instance that proves that, you know, although we have all these similarities between us, like I spoke of earlier, we all have a mom, we all have a dad, you know, we all like a certain type of food, you know, not necessarily the same type of food, but we all have a preference for our own preferred type of food. We have a favorite color, you know, maybe we have a favorite childhood experience, or maybe we have a favorite adult experience, maybe we have a favorite album. We like when people show us love. We like when people hug us. You know, we all have these things that make us humans at the end of the day. But we also have to recognize that society has deeply woven prejudice and racism in everything, right? So today, with that being said, I want you guys to just start taking deep breaths. Stretch your arms. I find that when I'm dealing with a lot of these tense racial subjects, and even just microaggressions, racism in my own life, my shoulders get so tense just right around this area, and my neck. So just take that time to And go ahead and wind up your shoulders. You can do it towards the back, and then you can reverse it to go towards the front. Lift those arms up to do a deep belly breath. Let it all out. Why don't we go do a nice head roll? And roll it to the left, all the way around, protecting the back of your neck by not going too far. And we'll do that one more time, all the way around. Oh, that's right. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and let's switch it and go the other way, towards our right, all the way around. All the way around. Good job. Right, straight forward. Are you here with me? I'm here with you. Let's do one more deep breath in, lifting our arms. Breathing in through your mouth and your nose. Let's do one more. One last time. Good. I want you to place your feet firmly on the floor. And I want your knees to be parallel to one another. Your feet planted firmly on the ground. You can have your back touching ever so slightly the back of the chair, but don't lean onto the back of the chair. And just sort of let your tailbone and your spine get really supple and relaxed, but also somehow manage to keep everything kind of straight at a 90-degree angle. So you're not tensing anything, you're not straining anything, you're totally relaxed, but at the same time you are maintaining that structure to keep yourself seated forward. Okay. Breathe in. Breathe out. Very good. Today I want you to just meditate on the idea and the hope and the prayer that people will see the struggle that the race that you belong to inherently has to deal with on this planet. I'm specifically talking to people of color. But if you are a white person who has done your anti-racism work and you've come to realize that you also have your own inherent struggle in essentially eliminating generational trauma of the colonizer, you can also insert yourself in that. Simultaneously, we also want to meditate on not having people see us only for our race, but to see who we are behind this. A mother, a father, a daughter, a son, an artist, a writer, a creator, a technologist, an engineer. Meditate on that and be proud of who you are. Show that dignity in who you are. And in the face of racism, in the face of microaggressions, in the face of people who chalk you down to something that you are not, and to someone that you are not, people who doubt you, people who unnecessarily fear you just because you may be Hispanic or Black or Asian or Arabic, Muslim or brown. Let that go. Let their microaggressions, let their assumptions, let their passive-aggressive nature roll right off of you. And remember who you are. They do not control who you are. I think we can end it there. I hope that this meditation helped you. I hope that it allows you to reflect on some things maybe that you did not before. If you have any thoughts, please put it in the comments. I'd love to discuss it with you. I'd love to have others who have joined us here discuss it as well. And I'll see you next time. Keep coming back. Have a great day.